The Ohio jobs miracle fades. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Kathy Kandinsky, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch, Derek Clay, Democratic strategist, and Bob Clegg, Republican strategist. You'd think it would be fairly easy to figure out how many jobs were created in Ohio last year. Well, apparently it's not, and that had the Kasich administration scrambling this week. As the Dispatch first reported, state figures showed Ohio created 12,000 jobs last year. That's not a lot, and John Kasich called that report fake news. Then the state revised its own figures and said Ohio created 32,000 jobs last year. But even with the revision, Ohio is producing fewer jobs in the last years of the Kasich administration than were produced in the final year of Ted Strickland's administration. Kathy Kandinsky, this really struck a nerve with John Kasich. I think that's why that's the fake news comment.
Right. We're not used to hearing him talk about fake news. And in fact, the fake news he referred to came from his own state agency. I think what got under the governor's skin was when we pointed out that the job numbers were worse than the final year of his predecessor, Democrat Ted Strickland. I think that struck a nerve with the governor, and I think that's why you saw him lash out. I'll add that he's since apologized, called our editor this week to apologize and said he was wrong. We were right.
Interesting. So Bob, is it because, Ted Strickland was the poster child for job loss in that 2010 campaign, even in 2014?
Yeah.
Kasich was going back to his predecessor. But, the Strickland says that he gave John Kasich a recovering economy last year.
Let's look at the comparable years here. Let's look at the year that Strickland, his last year. We had 9%, probably 9% unemployment rate. So you had hundreds of thousands of people looking for jobs. So of course you're going to have a lot of people that did get jobs, but you had even many more that didn't. Now we're at a point in our economy here in Ohio, we're at 4.7% unemployment. We're getting to a point where there's less and less people looking for jobs. So the days of creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in any given year isn't going to happen because we don't have that many people looking for jobs.
So it's context, Derek.
Absolutely. When you think about where we were in the last year of Governor Strickland's administration, the recovery for where we were with the economic downturn was just starting to come. We were just starting to come out of that. When you look at the number of jobs that Governor Kasich has created since he's been in office, since January 2011, that's about 383,000 jobs, 500 jobs. When you look at what Michigan has added, 425,600 jobs. That's nearly 25,000 more jobs in that state up north, right? And he was running ads in Michigan touting his job record. So what we're looking at is a credibility problem. And that's something that the president struggles with, and now it looks like the governor may be struggling with a credibility problem on this jobs issue.
So Jesse, this is part of John Kasich's campaign, is he's a common sense Republican, common sense conservative, and also this job creation thing in Ohio. So it could drag him down should he run for president or continue to run for president.
Certainly. I think it is something that John Kasich has touted as part of his record since the very beginning. It's certainly something that he ran on when he was running for president against Donald Trump. Look at Ohio's recovery. And so these numbers are very sensitive to him for that reason. And I think it's something, like Derek said, unemployment is very low, but it is not particularly lower than anywhere else in the nation. We have one of the higher unemployment rates in the country right now. So while it is low, it is not necessarily good compared to the rest of the U.S.
Bob, is it fair to, does this just show that the governor really cannot control the state's economy as much as they claim they can control it, or blame the other person for controlling it? Because we're so dependent on the national economy.
Yeah, it's all a matter of it's all a matter of looking at what he did over his tenure, and he did create hundreds of thousands of new jobs here in Ohio, and that's what he's got. It's all a matter of what are the facts. The facts are he did this, and you always argue, well, could a Democrat have created more jobs? Maybe. But then maybe they wouldn't have, and that's what they talk about. Democrats always complained about using that 10% unemployment under Ted Strickland, and well, he had bad economic times. But it's always a question of, well, could somebody else have maybe done better? And we never have an answer for that, you know?
Why can't we get better numbers? I mean, are these numbers reliable? Are these trustworthy numbers?
Depends who's using them, you know? I mean, it depends who's using them. The funny thing is that there's plenty of numbers for candidates on both sides to use to give themselves credit and discredit the others. There's been a lot of jobs created, but at the same time, our median wage and income here in Ohio is not back up to pre-recession levels. Our poverty rate is not back up to pre-recession levels. So the good news is there's plenty of numbers for Democrats to use, there's plenty of numbers for Republicans to use, and they can throw them at each other.
Yeah, some of it is good luck, but some of it is you have to just go out and work it too. You know, as governor, you're the CEO of this state. You have to go out and be talking to corporations, trying to get them to lure them to this state. You have to be going overseas and other places. And, you know, the governor's been occupied running for president for the last 2 years. So I don't know how much of that activity is actually taking place.
He did a lot of that in his first 6 years in office.
Absolutely.
I mean, does he deserve some credit for the gain of almost 500,000 jobs since he took over in 2011?
Absolutely. I think that he does deserve some credit. He's done a pretty good job of managing our state. But, you know, other governors, other Democratic governors have done the same thing.
Jesse, how's this going to play out in the governor's race here? I assume that Mike DeWine is going to say stick with Republican leadership because we gained 500,000 jobs, and Democrats are going to say, yeah, but we're flattened out.
So it's been interesting. The Democrats have certainly been pointing to these numbers to say that we need a change in leadership, that, you know, we could be doing better under a Democratic governor. Whether that's true or not, we'll perhaps find out. Also, Mary Taylor, who is a Republican, but his lieutenant governor, has been pointing out we could be doing better. And Mike DeWine, who's the other Republican, has been staying somewhat silent, I would say, on these issues. So
on everything. He's been staying silent on everything.
So both Democrats and some Republicans are pointing to these numbers as a problem for John Kasich and why they would do better. So,
but,
you know.
The Republicans, which you will expect this year, we'll talk about the last time we did have a Democrat governor and the number of jobs we did lose. So once again, like Kathy said, I mean, we're going to all have numbers that we all can use to our own advantage.
All right. It has been a month since the massacre at a high school in Parkland, Florida, and the gun debate does not appear to be fading. This week, students at some 24 Central Ohio schools organized. They painted signs and walked out of class for 17 minutes in honor of 17 people killed. The students called on politicians to do more to prevent gun violence, more restrictions on guns, better health services, mental health services, and increased school safety. Jesse Balmert, I mean, again, impressive showing by these students. Are lawmakers at the State House paying attention? Are they doing anything in response to it?
So I think it'll be something that remains to be seen. There are about 250 students that came to the State House this week after many of them did walkouts at their own schools, drove to the State House and met with a number of lawmakers, both Democratic and Republican, about bills that they want to see changed. It was fascinating because they had a list of like bills that they were for and bills that they were against and really knew their talking points. But the legislature is still controlled by Republicans who have been not supportive of a lot of gun control measures. Most of the bills that have been signed have granted greater access to concealed handgun licenses or just guns in general. The governor and his group of Republicans and Democrats have put forth about 6 proposals about what they would do to address gun issues in Ohio, and it's not something that he brought up the next week at the State of the State. Yeah. It's not something that's been introduced yet, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Kathy, where will that proposal go? Is it just going to sit on a shelf? Or?
I think it's going to be hard for them to get anything through the legislature without changing the people who are in the legislature. But I give the students a lot of credit for keeping the issue alive. I think their rally was really well timed. I think they have another rally scheduled for the 24th of this month. So they're doing a good job keeping the issue out in front of the public, perhaps a little longer this time. But you know, remember these kids, what kind of struck me so much about it was these are kids who have grown up and school shootings have been all they know in school. I mean, we remember, you know, fire drills and tornado drills and getting under your desk. These students remember active shooter drills. So it's a totally different thing for them, and I give them a lot of credit for what they're doing.
Yeah, the students, they really should be commended. I mean, they've done a good job in organizing themselves. And, you know, the question is, what can they learn from like the Me Too movement, which was largely a social media movement that began and still is to this day. Now, you know, as far as what the legislature is going to do, I mean, we have just seen no action here in Ohio. Florida has actually taken measures. Of course, the tragic shooting was in Florida, in that home state of Florida. But you know, corporations are now taking the lead versus legislators. You see Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart, United Airlines, all taking these measures on their own.
Yeah. Bob, can you see Republican lawmakers saying, okay, we'll go with the age restriction on guns from 18 to 21. We'll ban bump stocks. Can you see the Ohio legislature right now doing that?
I think they may. I mean, I think it wouldn't be done this session because we really don't have enough time in this session to even tackle something like that. But I think coming up in the next session that begins next January, I think you might see something like that. What I appreciated about what the students are talking about is they're not just talking about banning guns, which could have been easy. They're talking about mental health issues, which is a big thing that I believe we have to try to tackle in all this, and that is keeping guns away from people who shouldn't have guns, whether they're mentally ill, whether they're felons that shouldn't have them. We don't do a very good job. We don't do a job at all at it. And I appreciate that they also are concerned about school security, and that's what the legislature is tackling right now, is making sure that schools are safer through more security measures.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if they did something. I mean, you had a Republican lawmaker come out just this week and said he thought it would be okay for 18-year-old students who are 18 years old rather, with no record. It'd be okay for them to bring rifles into school, guns into schools. I mean, does that sound like a legislature that's going to look at gun control? I don't think so.
Were there many, Jesse? Were there many students from rural districts at the State House? Did we see many of these protests in rural Ohio? I don't. No, there was some out near Springfield, the school that had a shooting. There was some talk of students walking out, but.
You know, a lot of the students that came to the State House were from the Cincinnati and Columbus areas in more urban districts. But I know there were walkouts across the state. I'm not sure the exact school districts and so forth, but.
One of the reasons why we sent a reporter to South High School, Derek, because, you know, it's more than just the school shootings, it's gun violence in general. Columbus had a record number of homicides last year, 85% of them were gun-related.
Right.
So it goes beyond just your school shooting situation, which gets all the headlines in the press.
Right. You know, I think the question you have to ask is, where are these guns coming from? You know, are kids in the inner city, how are they getting these guns? They're certainly not going to, you know, Field and Stream and picking up a gun, you know, especially if they're underage. So we have to look at that issue first. I think that the exposure of making sure that we have enough counselors in schools that are talking about this issue, not just when a school shooting happens, but throughout the school year, and making sure that, you know, kids know the danger of guns and why they shouldn't have them.
And that's another whole issue of like violence prevention that has to take place in our schools. And it's not just with guns, it's bullying, it's physical violence, fights that occur at so many schools. And I don't know how we go about doing that. It has to be part of our education curriculum. Also maybe having security, more security, whether it's police personnel or metal detectors or something, but we just have a violence issue in our schools that we somehow have to stop and prevent from happening.
All right. There will be 435 congressional elections this year. When they all happen at once in November, it's really not a big deal. But when special elections happen one at a time, they get a lot of attention, perhaps too much attention. But still, when a Democrat wins a district considered safely in the hands of a Republican, we take note. And that's what happened in Pennsylvania this week. The question, Bob Clegg, is could it happen here in Pat Tiberi's old district? And you're representing one of the candidates who's running,
I am.
Troy Balderson.
Yes, I am.
But could the wave hit there?
It could, but you know, when you look at Pennsylvania, what that tells us is that when you have a bad Republican candidate who is outraised 5-1 by his Democrat opponent, then a Democrat can win a Trump district that's plus 20 Trump points. I don't think it tells you exactly what would happen in the Ohio District 12 race at all. The quality, it still matters. Quality of candidates and how much money you raise. Those are two, probably the most important factors. And unfortunately for us, like what happened in Alabama in that, special Senate race, when you have a bad candidate with not a lot of money, you're going to lose. I don't care how Republican a district is.
Hey, listen.
Are you predicting the 12th will go blue?
We'll see.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that, this election victory in Pennsylvania proves that voters do pay attention and they want change in Washington bad. Like you said, the evidence of that with Doug Jones' victory in Alabama. Now you see Conor Lamb in Pennsylvania. It just proves that President Trump doesn't necessarily have the clout that he thinks that he has in these red states. And I think you will see a blue wave in November.
No, in fact, you saw, I think there was some polling that showed when Trump actually came to campaign for the Republican candidate that his numbers went down, which I thought was very, very telling.
Jesse, it comes down to the suburbs. There were some Pittsburgh suburbs in that Pennsylvania district, and the suburban voters less enthusiastic for Donald Trump. I don't know if they're voting for Democrats, maybe just staying home. But in here, the two districts in this area, Steve Stiver's district, Pat Tiberi's old district, there's a lot of suburban voters in Delaware County and southern and western portions of Franklin County.
Yeah, I think that's why people are making the comparison with the 12th district, Pat Tiberi's former seat, just because there are a lot of the suburban voters. There are some rural voters. It goes up into Delaware and, out into surrounding
Licking County, Morrow
Licking County and so forth. So it's you do have the suburbs around Columbus, but you do have a fair amount of rural area in the 12th district as well. Stiver's district is quite large, going from Columbus all the way down to Athens County, which has Ohio University and a lot of college students. And so I think that's why you're seeing the comparison between Pennsylvania and Ohio, that these are both areas where perhaps voters were less enthusiastic about Trump than other parts of the state. And so, does that make it easier to flip?
So, Bob, you're looking at this race closely. Will this race be decided in the suburbs of northeast Franklin County and Delaware County?
Well, yeah, I think it breaks into three distinct areas. You have Franklin County portion, you have a Delaware County portion, and then everywhere else. Yeah. And I think it kind of breaks out that way. The thing that the Democrats, to flip these kind of races, they're going to have to put a Democrat up who's not against guns, who's not for any kind of trade agreements, and who's against Nancy Pelosi. Because, Conor Lamb stated, I'm not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi. The problem Democrats have in both of those districts is they're going to have primaries. And the primary voters, Democrat primary voters in those districts, are probably going to nominate somebody well to the left of that electorate. And they didn't have a primary situation in that congressional district. If they did, I'm not so sure Conor Lamb would have survived it.
Are those Democrats out there?
There are some
types of Democrats?
Yeah, there's some Democrats out there that I think can be competitive in that district. The 12th district is a very difficult district to win for Democrats, but I think that under the right circumstances, in which we do have the right circumstances now, I think that you could have a Democrat that could be victorious.
All right. The billionaire who has been running those TV ads urging Congress to impeach President Trump was in Columbus this week. Tom Steyer held his first town hall meeting at the downtown YMCA. Despite claims that hundreds of people had snapped up tickets, only about 100 people showed up to hear Steyer's call to impeach Trump, whom he calls a lawless and dangerous president.
The only way that we can think about impeachment, I think the only way that's fair is this is someone who is elected by the people. So to impeach him and remove him has to come from the will of the American people speaking together. And that's exactly what we've been trying to enable and to empower.
Dirk Clay, you're no fan of Donald Trump. Should he be impeached?
Well, listen, all I know is I'm going to hold this prop up. 17, we're at 17 and counting of cabinet members and other people in the Trump administration that have left his office since he's been in office. So I think the reason why you see folks like Tom Steyer and others that are pushing for him to be impeached is because they're just tired. They're tired of the ineptness in the office, the indecisiveness, the failure to respond to the Russian meddling, porn stars, the whole nine. I mean, people are just fed up.
Ineptness, indecisiveness, is that a high crime and misdemeanor, though, for impeachment?
Well, so the 17 folks that are now no longer part of the Trump administration, no. I mean, that's his preference. He's the president. He can hire and fire as he wants to. But when you're talking about Russian meddling into our election system, and there's been no real attempt to try to do sanctions on the Russian country and officials, I think that's cause of high crimes.
Jesse, he's in Cincinnati, I think, either tonight or this weekend sometime. Surprised that only 100 people showed up. It got a lot of attention. There was several articles ahead of it. There was a lot of social media activity, but that room looked pretty empty.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I believe the Cincinnati one was this afternoon. I don't think it was, heavily attended. And so I think it's something that maybe people talk about impeachment, but whether or not they're going to go out to a rally for somebody that they don't know in order to talk about that is something different. Whether they would post about it on social media or something might be different. And so yeah, I'm sure those aren't the numbers that he was hoping for.
Being a billionaire doesn't make you a good politician necessarily, and organizing a crowd, right?
No, it does not. And what concerns me about this is I don't want to get in a situation where impeachment is used as a way to disagree with somebody on politics. I mean, it's a very, and you know what? Republicans got accused of it back in 1998 when they impeached Bill Clinton.
There were calls to impeach Obama as well during his.
Yeah, and if the Koch brothers had organized, impeachment meetings against Barack Obama, I think we would be there would have been quite an uproar. Yeah. And that's what I don't want it to get to. I don't want this situation to occur so that the next time a Democrat gets in, we have the Koch brothers organizing an impeachment effort.
Well, it seems like it's been that way, Kathy, ever since Richard Nixon, and then there was a president or two between, but then Bill Clinton.
Right.
Impeached, and then after there was some calls for impeaching George W. Bush.
Well, I think
Barack
it just
Obama.
Underscores just how highly partisan we've become, and how it doesn't matter, you're either with them or you're against them. That's really the way it's become in this country, and I expect it to continue. I mean, I don't know why to think otherwise, but to see an initiative like the one we're seeing now succeed, I think is a pretty long shot.
Yeah. All right, time for our final off-the-record parting shots. Bob Clegg, we'll start with you.
The Democrats are very serious about getting the governor's office back from Ohio. There's a Democrat Governors Association that's already committing $4 to $6 million to spend this fall against our Republican nominee, and they're probably going to need every single dime because their nominee's not going to have anywhere near as much money.
Derek.
Well, this week in an unprecedented defeat, the president of the union that represents 4,000 of Columbus City Schools teachers was ousted in an election on Wednesday. So we'll see how that.
What was the reason?
They wanted to make sure, they wanted to see if the person that won wanted a more aggressive and outspoken approach as to how they deal with their
West Virginia, all over. Yeah. You never know. Kathy.
Well, we're not going to see the legislature act on gun restrictions. I'm pretty certain of that. But we are going to see them rescue independent pharmacists. We've been writing a lot about this issue. Medicaid managed care rates to pharmacies have been really low, forcing a lot of them out of business, and it looks like the legislature is going to pretty quickly intervene.
And Jesse.
I guess I just encourage everybody to read my colleague's work at Cincinnati.com about the fight that's going on between our mayor and city manager right now. There's allegations of people going to strip clubs, so.
Wow. Pretty boring here in Columbus compared to that. Can we blame it on the streetcar? Some would. Anyway, my final thought, we at WOSU have a new podcast, a political podcast. It's called Snollygoster. No, it's not a Sesame Street character. It's an old political term. 89.7 NPR News anchor Steve Brown and I host it each week. It's an irreverently serious look at Ohio politics. You can subscribe at iTunes or wherever you find your podcast, and you can learn what the definition of Snollygoster is. If you subscribe, you can also Google it, but listen to the podcast. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and each episode on demand at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.